Ready for the dictation? Start. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's speech on Tuesday sought to outline his vision for India in a post coronavirus world order. It was a reiteration of his worldview and his faith in India's manifest destiny, seeking validation in the crisis of the old order. Mr. Modi's pro market supporters and his left critics both understood him as an ally of global capitalism in 2014. Stephen Bannon, the ideologue of the Trump uprising in the US, termed Mr. Modi's politics anti-globalism, a point that he reiterated in a recent interview to an Indian channel. There are at least four discernible standards in Mr. Modi's speech. First, import substitution, an objective that drove nationalist economic policies in the 20th century, is back. Profit driven globalization had brought to the fore multiply insecurities of countries already when the pandemic struck, and it multiplied these fears manifold overnight. The biggest superpowers struggles with procuring enough masks and paracetamol, for instance, has exposed its vulnerabilities. Self-reliance is suddenly not a bad idea again. Mr. Modi's policies had already reflected this thinking earlier, but the new context has given him the courage to be vocal about local. In a crisis, only the local capacities can be useful. Second, this is not a rejection of globalization but a call for a new form of globalization, from profit driven to people centric, as Mr. Modi said. He believes that India is the repository of such a wisdom. It's the Vishwaguru, teacher of the world. The global brands of today were sometimes also very local like this. They became global from local. He elaborated further on India-led globalization, on climate, on being helpful to other countries by offering them supplies in a time of crisis, led by the principle of Vasudev Kutumbakam. Third, the manner in which he brought China into the picture without naming it. India's self-reliance can only be at the cost of China. The current crisis could work to China's advantage further if it is business as usual. His speech obliquely questioned the Chinese grip over global supply chains and was an invitation to Western partners such as the US for closer partnerships. Fourth, his notion of reforms for self-reliance, not for globalization. The word reform is an ambiguous one but widely used as a code for pro-capital measures. In 2016, in his keynote speech at 41st AGM of US India Business Council in Washington, D.C., that explained his views on reforms. I have said several times that my aim is to reform, to transform. For me, reforms are those policies that transform the lives of ordinary citizen, he said, adding that policies to ensure that growth benefits the poor and the weaker sections and a frontal attack on corruption were reforms.